It's the Score North Twin Show.
All right, Score North Twin Show, Extra Innings, Declan Goff, live from Target Field. Hopefully for not the last time this week. 6 games left in the Minnesota Twins season. It's on life support. I said it was on hospice care yesterday. I know that was a little aggressive. As someone who has had to experience hospice care in his family, I didn't think it was too aggressive because I know what that looks like. But the Twins have 6 games left. Miami Marlins, Florida Marlins, however the hell you want to call them. Baltimore Orioles, 6 games left. They can still find themselves in the playoffs, so hit the like button, subscribe button on the Score North Twin Show YouTube channel or on the podcast feeds. I know this has been a little bit of a dud here in the last month, but I appreciate everyone who has listened, who has watched, who has supported the Score North Twin Show, so thank you very much, and keep hitting the like button, subscribe button, dropping your feedback and comments is always appreciated too. All right, Roscoe, so I did catch up with Rocco Baldelli and some players earlier today during pregame availability. I have some roster updates on a few guys in Max Kepler, Chris Paddack, and Justin Topa, but Rocco did not want to talk about the past. That's not what's on the horizon. Instead, they have everything to prove. That was his quote. They have everything to prove over the final 6 games of the regular season here. The Twins find themselves a game and a half, or at least a game out, with the Tigers winning today. And essentially, with 6 games left, the Twins have to play 1 game better than the Tigers and the Royals over that 6-game stretch. If they do that, they will find themselves in the playoffs. I would like to think 5 of 6 gets that done, maybe 4 and 2 gets that done, or with how terrible Kansas City has played, maybe in an even weirder way, 3 and 3 or less somehow gets it done. But I'll say this, 5 of 6 against 2 teams that could be checked out. Baltimore is still in contention for the division, but they could also wrap up a wild card spot before they get here on Friday. But you do have 3 games in front of you against a bad Marlins team. Everything to prove here, Ross. That was the line from Rocco. They have everything to prove over these next 6 games.
Well, and things to keep in mind, you hold the tiebreaker over both Detroit and Kansas City, so that could come into play here. I logically, Declan, think you're probably chasing Kansas City. You probably, at this point, likely I would think you can't pass Detroit because Detroit closes with 3 at home against the White Sox, and I just can't imagine Detroit losing more than a game, if that, to the White Sox, who are basically winning just over 1 out of every 5 games, Declan. So I just don't really think that that's going to happen. But again, only being a game out with 6 to play, it's not where the Twins want to be. It's not where they should be. You could easily, by things that you laid out, end up winning one of these wild card spots still by a couple of games. You are at home. Hopefully you get a little bit of a jolt from being at home. I know you're going to give us an injury update on maybe who we will or won't see these final 6 games and into the playoffs if the Twins get there. I would say that at this point, Declan, speaking from me as a fan, from the fan perspective, it's really disappointing to be here. But if you finish strong these final 6 games and make the playoffs, for the last 3 months, I pretty much told myself they were going to get a wild card spot. So if you still are able to sew that up, I don't think I'm as disappointed. There's still things I'm going to be disappointed in this season. A lot of it has stuff to do with not actually on the field. We've talked about those things on this show. You've talked about it an awful lot with Phil and Judd and even Trevor Plouffe on the Staples show. But at this point, let's just see what happens over the final 6 days. If they miss the playoffs, whatever. I'm kind of in that mode. But if they make the playoffs, great. I'd still rather make it than not, even if I'm disappointed and frustrated in a few things. So let's see what happens. I would say you finally are in must-win territory. Any loss to the Marlins is probably going to be crippling. So it starts tonight. Kind of got to get these 3, at least 2 out of 3, and go from there.
So we'll hopefully not do a morgue or a wake episode this time next week. To your point, the Twins still can find themselves in the playoffs, which start exactly a week from the day the wild card series does. And if the Twins get the 6th seed, that is most likely a trip to Houston. If the Twins find themselves somehow with the 5th seed, that is most likely a trip to Baltimore. Here on Tuesday, on Game 1 of this homestand against the Marlins, they are throwing Bailey Ober. And if everything goes according to plan, this would be Bailey Ober's last regular season start. So Bober is slated to start Tuesday. Pablo Lopez is currently slated to start Friday. that would mean Ober, in the event they have to clinch on 162, would start on Sunday. That would also mean Ober can't pitch in a playoff series, at least on normal rest in 3 consecutive games, which is what the wild card format is. So as much as we don't usually do game previews like we do here on Extra Innings, Ober will toe the rubber, who's been excellent for the Twins. He has gotten little run support this season, especially lately. But if he does his job, that will be the last time Bailey Ober makes a regular season start for the Twins, and hopefully he doesn't have to make a start on Sunday. Pablo Lopez would start Friday in Baltimore. There is still a path, I believe, for the Twins to clinch by Friday. They would need a lot of help. They need to sweep the Marlins. They would need probably the Royals also to be swept for that to happen, I believe. So I think the magic number is about 7 or 8. And I'm not going to do the math on the fly. That's never a good idea.
It's tougher to do a magic number when you're trailing than when you're winning. I do know that. Yeah, when you're winning,
it's easier to do. But in a perfect world, Pablo Lopez wouldn't start on Friday. I'm going to envision he is. I don't think the Twins are going to clinch a playoff spot before Baltimore comes here. So that means, knock on wood, the Twins will hopefully have a playoff spot locked up at the latest Saturday, if not Friday, because they do not want to throw Bailey Ober on Sunday. Even that's the season's on the line, I get that. But how they're trying to line this up, they're hoping that this is Bailey Ober's last regular season start.
Speaking of arms and basically throwing everything you need to try and win games and get victories to clinch one of those final playoff spots, what can you tell me about the bullpen and what the bullpen? How about not bullpen? The bullpen. What can you tell us about the bullpen? And is it going to be all arms on deck here? If Griffin Jax needs to pitch 3 days in a row, will he pitch 3 days in a row? If Duran needs to pitch 3 days in a row at this point, will he? Because I've mentioned to you, Declan, the last couple of weeks, a lot of my angst has been you're still resting arms when you absolutely need to be winning games. And maybe I'm wrong on that. You can tell me I'm wrong and I'll listen to that. But at this point, if Griffin Jax and Duran are breathing and they're your best options, I don't care how tired they are. They need to be out there because of the rest of this bullpen, Declan, is unreliable. I would rather have Duran and Jax at 60% and 80% arm fatigue than pretty much anybody else you can trot out there. Now, to ask Jax to pitch 6 days in a row, no, I don't expect that. But if he needs to go 3 days in a row, independent of how many pitches he's thrown, I think he needs to. We're at that point, Declan. You can't just rest a guy for spring training at this point.
Yes, I believe anyone is breathing and the Twins are within less than a 3-run situation, I'm going to guess Jackson Duran will pitch multiple days in a row, especially today. Hey, the Marlins are bad. They've come back down to earth. You should kick this team's arse, to be honest, and you might have to throw them just to get them loose and not have them completely cold, but in a perfect world, I'm hoping, the Twins are hoping, they don't have to throw Jackson Duran back-to-back with a 1-run lead in the 8th and 9th. The Twins' bats, which have been putrid, by the way. So
got to score runs to do that.
Not a guarantee by any means, but that's probably their plan. I can say Chris Paddack, Justin Topa, there might be plans for these guys to return to the Twins by this weekend. Justin Topa, as Patrick Royce said, so he's an actual person. He's here. Yes. Justin Topa is here. He was included in the Jorge Polanco trade. Physically, he's ready. He was with the St. Paul Saints last week. He's kind of waiting for the call at that point. Now, Topa, I wouldn't expect to see him. He wasn't activated today. He won't be activated today. But Justin Topa might finally make his season debut with the Twins after being shelved with injuries,
Hooray!
Starts and stops. Justin Topa might make his season debut this weekend against Baltimore. Chris Paddack is going to have another live simulation this week to throw. And if that goes well and if things are tracking well, you also have to remember, speaking of how the bullpen depth works, if random guys are going to be throwing multiple innings and being used to close out games, winning or losing, they just might be optioned off the roster to give those guys a fresh look and give those guys their roster spots. So I wouldn't expect Paddack or Topa to be ready for this series against Miami. It would not shock me if those guys are cleared to play against Baltimore, and both of them are still on the 40-man roster, which means they are postseason eligible. So guys like Cole Irvin, who was not postseason eligible, like he would probably lose his roster spot. But the reinforcements could come in Chris Paddack and Justin Topa, who hasn't pitched all year. But weirdly enough, that might create a fun, and we're getting ahead of ourselves because the Twins aren't in the playoffs, but that might create a fun roster crunch decision with how that would shake out if the Twins would submit a playoff roster with Paddack and Justin Topa on it.
So pretty much everybody who is on the 40-man roster, or at least I believe appears in a big league game, winds up with the World Series ring. We should want the Minnesota Twins to win the World Series. So random guys like Cole Irvin, who appeared in 3 games, get World Series rings. That's always one of my favorite things to follow in Major League Baseball, Declan.
Yeah, I don't know how that works. Like,
I think it's literally if you appear, you get a ring.
Do you? Well, that's sweet. I mean, I've been here all year. I'll take something.
Christian Ponder should have got a Super Bowl ring because he was active for one Denver Broncos game all those years ago.
That's true, yeah. So we'll see what happens with them. Also, another injury update. Max Kepler's season most likely done. We have potentially seen Max Kepler for the last time in a Twins uniform.
Yep, I was going to ask you about that.
So contract year for him, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if Kepler's season is over. His regular season for sure looks like it's over. Maybe there's a path he joins the team in the playoffs, but he's dealt with a bunch of nagging injuries from knees to hips. Probably have seen Max Kepler for the last time. I wouldn't envision the Twins bring back Max Kepler. They have a surplus of left-handed bats that can play right field in Matt Wallner. Trevor Larnach has played out there in a pinch. And just in general, Kepler, I think, was a good soldier. He's been here a long time. He's the longest tenured player on the roster. But Max Kepler's season is over. His regular season is for sure, and we probably have seen the last of him. So I guess pour one out for Max Kepler. I don't know if you'll see him again in a Twins uniform.
It's a tough thing to say about human beings, but they're commodities in professional sports. And I don't want to say he's easily replaceable, but what he does for this team, Declan, there's a lot that's already playing on the big league roster. And there's also plenty on the way in the minor leagues that could be here at some point soon. So It would not surprise me at all. You know what'll happen? You know who could use Max Kepler? The White Sox. There's my call. Max Kepler's going to play.
The Whiteys.
He's going to play for the White Sox next year. Here's a question for you, and it's not the quick hitter. What needs to go well this week for the Minnesota Twins to get one of these playoff spots? If you had to isolate it to just one thing, is it going deep into ball games from the starting pitchers? Is it the lineup waking back up again and scoring runs? If the Twins are going to have a 4-2, 5-1, 6-0 stretch, what's going to be the biggest reason that happens in, quite honestly, what's been brutal baseball for about a month and a half right now? What changes things today for that to happen?
Bats, runs, clutch hitting. That's been their biggest problem. Yes, there's been some bullpen meltdowns. There's been some. I mean, Pablo got shelled against Boston on Sunday, but I would say most likely that the Twins' bats have to wake up. The offense, which was pretty much non-existent in the first 20 games of the season, then for about 3 or 4 months was pretty damn good, and that has also been on life support ever since. Number one on that list, the Twins have to score. They have to score 6 runs a game. They've been averaging about 3.5 over the last month, which is one of the worst figures in baseball. Unless they can figure out ways to just win close games, which they clearly can't. We saw numerous low-scoring games against Cleveland. That's not the recipe for success. We saw one of the most painful baseball games in the world on Friday in Boston that I've ever seen from Major League Baseball teams. They have to score runs. That's the number one thing. Number two, I would say just figuring out your bullpen plan. Like, outside of Pablo and Ober, like, I just have pretty low expectations for the rotation. Low expectations meaning, can the Festas and the Simeons and the Zebby Matthews give you the 5 and fly? Like, and that's not asking a lot, but that's where we're at with those young guys. They're relying on guys that have never pitched this much before and that are rookies and inexperienced. They don't have a choice. So, like Ober tonight, yeah, I would envision giving him 7 strong innings and, again, never making another appearance in the regular season for them. But I would put the bats number 1, the bullpen number 2, and the expectations for the starters third. The bats have been the most disappointing part of this stretch, and they have Correa and Lewis and Buxton in the lineup on Tuesday. All these guys are here. They are facing a lefty, but the bats have to wake up. You can't score 2 to 3 runs and expect to win these games. The Cleveland can do that. The Twins can't do that.
On the 3 young pitchers, I would rank them in trustability in this order. I would go SWR 1, I would go Festa 2, and I would go Zebby 3. Do you agree or disagree with that?
That's probably right, and I think think if one of those guys had to start a playoff game, I think if it's lined up appropriately, of course, I think Festa gets that call. And it's most likely, and now it's not Festa going out there and hoping to get 5 or 6 innings. I think Festa gets the first time through the order, and they go from there.
Yeah.
Festa first time through the order is actually very effective. It's after that when wheels start to come off. I could also see a path where maybe it's Simeon the first time through the order, David Festa as the bulk guy who then gets a crack with players not seeing him through the first time. I can see a path like that. But I think Festa, and just in general, I think stuff-wise going into next year, Festa's probably the one that intrigues me the most. Simeon's been great. I think Sim will probably also potentially have a rotation spot locked up for next season already. But Festa's probably the one that they have the best chance to get outs with is Festa.
Yeah, looking ahead to next year, if we want to do that quickly, I agree with you. I think SWR most likely already in the rotation. Festa, I think with a good spring training could earn that, but I think it's on the front office somehow, some way, whether they have money to do so or not, Declan. I think you need to go get another starter that is similar to an Ober or a Lopez that you can just trust every 5th day is going to go out there and do their thing and give you a chance to win. I don't want to put you on the spot, but this time of year can be really fun, even though, again, they're now a game out. That last playoff spot, it hasn't been really fun, but you have 2 series at home with the chance to get into the playoffs. Weeknight series can be tough in April, May, and September for fans. Do we have any idea what attendance might look like over the next few days against the Marlins? I'm assuming the weekend could be really good if the Twins are still in the mix, but I don't know. Any idea what it might look like tonight? Have you heard anything from anybody?
Well, Royce said it'll be me, you, Judd, the Beat, and about 8,500 loyal fans.
Okay.
I think that's probably accurate.
And I would agree with that. Which I don't think is a great sign as to how the fans are feeling at this moment.
Nope. And look, I would envision in a crazier world that if the Twins do host a home playoff game here, that would be most likely, obviously, in the divisional round in Game 3 or 4. I think the fans will show up. I don't think the energy will be the same as it was last year.
Yep,
and
I would agree with that.
I know that's sad and it's disappointing, and that would, by the way, that meant the Twins would have upset a wild card series, and they had at least forced a Game 3 in a divisional round. Unfortunately, that's where we're at here. Like, the fan base is complete in wait and see mode, or just disappointed, checked out mode, and I don't really blame them for that. Also, you have conflicting options. The Vikings are 3-0. They're playing the Packers on Sunday. They've been badass. The Wolves are going to start here in a couple weeks. Gopher football finally is going to play a road game for the first time all season. So I get the Twins fans, and more, I should say, Minnesota sports fans, because that's the crew they need to linger in.
Yep.
Like, the Minnesota sports fan is who they have lost, and they've dug their own grave in that with a lot of different decisions with personnel and the front office and ownership. That's where they're at.
We are a great sports town, Declan. I truly do believe that. But having not won a major championship in men's sports outside of the St. Paul Saints and the American Association Championship in 2019, we kind of need to see it a bit before we buy into it. We don't just blindly show up unless it is for the Minnesota Vikings. I'm with you. I hope the fans turn out as much as they can while the Twins are still in it and it's still interesting. But yes, we'll definitely see a wait and see. Do you have anything else, or do you want a quick hitter? We missed it, and then we got admonished in the comments the last time we did this. So
let's do a quick hitter. Let's do this. Hit the like button, subscribe button on the Score North Twins Show for Ross's crazy quick hitters, which he's been doing all season long.
Let's do this NCAA tournament style, Declan. There will be 12 teams in the Major League Baseball playoffs.
Oh, God.
Let's just say they broke them into quadrants of 4. Okay, so you'd have 4, 8, and 12. Give me your 3 number 1 seeds in Major League Baseball. And it can be from anywhere. You don't have to take 3 American League teams. Just who are your 3 best teams entering the Major League Baseball playoffs? Who do you got?
Dodgers, Phillies, Guardians, Yankees.
So you put the Guardians as a number 1 seed, Yankees as your first number 2 seed?
Wait, are you saying 1, 2, 3, 4? Am I ranking 4 teams as 1 seeds? What am I doing here?
You can do 4 teams as 1 seeds.
These are the ones you got to prep me on. This is a lot of work here, Ross.
I was just looking for 3 because there's 12 teams in the playoffs. So you would have one group of 4, another group of 4, another. I know the math doesn't work, and you would wind up with 3 teams. I'm just fine. You can have 4. You can have 4.
Okay.
I out quick hittered myself with this one, Dex.
All right, so Dodgers and Phillies, I think, are the two best teams for sure. I really think both those teams in the National League are better than any team in the American League. I think Cleveland's built for the postseason. I like what I've seen from Cleveland. And the Yankees have been weird. I could see the Yankees in the World Series. I could see them losing in the divisional round. So that's how I would kind of go from there. The wild card team, and look, I know I'm probably getting some shade from Milwaukee. The Brewers have been great all season. They ran away with that division. They deserve a ton of credit. It's funny. They're basically the Cleveland of the National League. I just don't pay attention to them, obviously, because they're not in the same division as the Twins, which is another conversation of realignment, which pisses me off. But in terms of the wild card teams that probably interest me the most, as much as this Tigers team's hot, they have Tariq Skubal and that's it. Skubal can't pitch every single day. I love him, but I don't really trust him there. Baltimore's got a great lineup, but again, after Corbin Burns, I don't know if they can really make a threat. I mean, the Padres and Mets, dude, those teams are the National League playoff field's awesome. 5 of those teams, legitimately, 5 of those teams I could see in the World Series. The AL, I don't know. I don't have a good feel. I think it's Cleveland because I just think they're built for playoff baseball. They're built for this spunky way to get into the World Series. But I don't love anyone in the American League. I think the World Series champion this year is going to come out of the National League.
Could this be the year that those Padres finally get it done?
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, they could. The Dodgers are as suspect as they've ever been with starting pitching. Their lineup still, Mookie Betts into Ohtani, into Freddie Freeman, whatever combination it is as good as Murderers Row 1, 2, 3 that you will ever see. That's pretty badass, but they do not have the starting pitching depth there that we're accustomed to. The Phillies went through that spunk when they were even here at Target Field, but I still like them as a team that could be in the NL Central, or the NLCS, sorry. And the Padres, yeah, I could see the Padres doing it. I like a lot of teams in the National League. The AL, I think, is going to be a scratch and claw, whoever's the last team standing fight. I think there's too many heavyweights in the National League this year.
One quick note for you, Declan, that has nothing to do with the quick hitter. I think we slighted the Seattle Mariners, who also still are in the mix and have a shot at one of those wild card spots.
They're a half game back of the Twins. This is true. They're a half game back. It's funny. I think if I could take Seattle's rotation, I'd rank that probably number 1 in the American League. I mean, it has been one of the best rotations in the American League. We think the Twins can't hit. I mean, this is the for the last 20 years. They have always had really good pitching. They have never had a good lineup. I mean, Seattle's got as good of a playoff rotation as anyone, if not the best. But they're basically begging their team to score 2 runs a game, and that's never a really good recipe for success in the playoffs.
Declan, I hope you have a great time tonight. Should be a fun time to be following the Minnesota Twins, or at least a fun time for content. Hopefully it's fun by seeing some wins on the field.
Absolutely. Hit the like button, subscribe button. This is Score North Extra Innings. Appreciate everyone listening and watching, supporting all season. There's a great episode with Trevor Plouffe, too, on this feed. If you haven't checked that out, go do so. This is Score North Twin Show Extra Innings.